Hi everyone, it's Jeff from Avada here. Welcome back. This is part 4 of the Building a Website from Scratch with Avada video course. This course is aimed at both beginners and more intermediate users, and in it I show you how to use the Avada website builder to create a complete website from scratch. If you haven't watched parts 1 through 3, please follow the links below and watch the series from the start. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with all the latest videos like this one. And if you don't want to miss one, click the bell icon to get notifications of all new videos on our channel. In the last video in this series, we built the homepage content. In this video, we will build the other static pages, the service page, the subservice pages, and the reviews page. Okay, let's begin. So we have a services page as well as 4 subservice pages. So let's start by editing the parent services page. What I want on this page is a hero section, a section to explain our points of difference from the competitors, and a section with links to the individual service pages. The setup wizard has populated the parent services page with some layout ideas, so let's have a look at this. I'll just collapse the navigator back to the parent containers. There are 6 on the page. I don't want to start with a container like this, so I'll delete that one. The next 2 containers work together as they overlap, and these 2 will work well together as the hero section, so let's keep these. The 3rd container will work for the points of difference, so I'll also keep that. And while I can use a pricing table like this one in the 4th container, I would rather have that on the services sub-pages, so I will delete that one here. And I can definitely use this last container as the links to my individual services. So let's build the page from this starting point. Okay, let's start with this top container. I'll just edit it and have a look. I'll call this one Our Services 1. And first up, I'm going to change the height back to auto here. So now I'll add a background image. I'll just come to the background tab and the image tab and remove this placeholder, and then I'll go find my banner image in the media library. It's this one here I want. I also want to add an overlay color, so I will change the background blending mode to overlay, and then on the color tab I will add color 8 and reduce the alpha channel here with a value of -70. Okay, this container has no column, so I'll add a 1-1 column and then add a title element. I'll call it Our Services, and on the Design tab I'll center it, set the font to color 1, and I'll set 0 pixels for the top and bottom margin. I also want to add the painter's edge that I added to the homepage hero to the bottom of this container as well. So I'll edit the container again and go to the Design tab, and let's have a look at what's happening here. As we can see, there is a negative bottom margin on this container, which is why the following container is overlapping. That's all good, but to add a section separator at the bottom of this first container, I can't have any bottom padding, and so I'll remove that for the default of 0 pixels. So now it's time to add the section separator. We have already saved that in a column into our library, so I'll add a new column here and head to the library columns and add our section separator from here. The only change I probably have to make is to change the top margin to push the title back up. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, let's check responsive views for this page. I'll probably need some changes due to the overlapping content here. I'll change to medium screen view. Okay, yeah, we need a few changes here. I'll just edit the container, and on the Design tab I'll change that bottom margin value to -120 pixels, so the container below also overlaps on medium screen view, and I'll clear these padding values. And that now looks okay. And let's check the small screen. Okay, here I don't want it to overlap, so I will set 0 pixel bottom margin. Okay, that was a bit more complex than usual, but we have overlapping containers and section separators going on. To simplify it, you could always just remove the negative margin and not have the overlap. Okay, let's move on. For the second container, which overlaps the first, I'd like to add another one of these columns here, as we have 4 services. I will just start with the container. I don't think I need to make any changes here, but I will just name this one to Our Services 2. I could edit these services individually, or delete all but one and work on that one and then duplicate and edit. I think the second method will be slightly quicker here, so I will do that. I'll delete the second and third column here and work on my first one. Okay, let's have a look at this column. I can see it's set to stretch, but it's not linked to anything. So for a start, I will link this to its respective page. This first one will be general painting. Now on the Design tab, I will change this to be a 1/4 column, so there's room for one more. I can also see that the padding here is set to 4 VW all around, and I'd like to reduce that. I'll just quickly change that to 2 VW all around. Excellent. Now to the content. Let's start at the top. Let's just change this first icon to a roller. I'll just search for that and select it. Now let's change this title out. This will be General Painting. I'll also just check the Design tab. For SEO reasons, I'd prefer the titles to be H2s, so I will set the heading tag to H2 and override the font size back to 20 pixels. For this example, I won't bother with the text below. That can stay as lorem ipsum. Okay, I think that's it, so let's duplicate this column 3 times. Now I just need to edit the links, titles, and icons. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, almost done. Finally, we just need to get the colors right. I'll go to the second column in the Background tab, and for the background color, I will go to the Global Color options and add a value of 5 into the luminosity field. That will just make it a bit brighter. In the third one, I will add 10, and in the last one, I will add 15. That way we get a nice transition of color across all 4 columns. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay, I think I'm done with these first 2 containers. Let's move on. I'm imagining this next container to be a point of difference section, so I might start by editing the container and giving it that name. You don't need to name your containers, of course, but it can come very much in handy when using the navigator. Otherwise, the container settings look good here. I might just reduce this top and bottom padding though, back to 110 pixels. Okay, let's look at the content. Let's use the same title as I have in other places. So I'll just add a new column here, and on the Library Columns tab, I'll click on the title and separator I saved previously. That gets added to the bottom of the columns, so I'll drag that back to the top and delete the column under it. Now I'll just edit the title element and change the title. Semantically, I think this should be a H3, so I will change that. And I think I will change the size of this column to be 3/4. Underneath this, we have these 6 1/3 columns. But here I'd prefer it to be only 4 columns to match my services. So I will delete 2 and change the other size to 1/2. Now I'll edit this first title and change it to Competitive Quotes. And on the Design tab, I'll change this to a H4. I'll just do that for the other titles. And I think I'll just increase the amount of dummy text here. For a real site, you will generally get the copy directly from the client, or you might write it yourself with notes from the client. Or if you are the client yourself, then you don't even need notes. But if you're not a writer and the budget is there, you might even hire a copywriter to write the site for you. In that case, you might use lorem ipsum like this to indicate to the copywriter just how much text you want. In this case, I'm just adding another short paragraph. Okay, I think this container is done. Let's move to the next one. Okay, this is the last container on the page. If we mouse over one of these, we can see it's actually an image element. It just has a hover effect and a caption style applied. I want to reproduce my services here again, so I'll start by adding the image. I'll just remove this placeholder and add my first service image again. I'll go with the full-size version here for good retina crispness. And while I'm on this tab, I'll scroll down and link this image to the General Painting page. So the title here is coming from the Caption tab, so let's go there and adjust it. If we remove the title, the image will show the title embedded in the image, or if there isn't one, we'll show the file name. In this case, there is no title, so it's showing my file name. Instead, I'll give it the title of General Painting. I could also change the image caption here as well, which displays as we mouse over it, but let's just leave this as is. I will just change the heading tag to H3 here. Okay, now as I'm going to have 2 rows of these, I'd better check the column margins. I'll just edit the column and go to the Design tab. I can see there's no bottom margin here, so I'll change that to about 70 pixels. Okay, that should work. So now I'll just delete the other one and clone this 3 times. Now I'll just change the images, titles, and links out. Be back in a sec. That looks pretty good now, but I think the padding above this is just too big. There was 110 pixels bottom margin on the container above, so I'll just edit the container again and drag this slider up to remove the top padding entirely. And with the bottom, the columns have 70 pixels bottom margin, so I'll just reduce the container padding here to 40 pixels. I'd better just check the responsive views. With so much browsing on phones these days, it's very important to check your designs for small screens as you go. And remember, these responsive views are not phone emulators, they just show the design with the breakpoints set in the global options. So before going live, it's very wise to check your designs on real tablets and a variety of phones. Anyway, let's look at the medium screen view. There's padding already set here, but on medium screens the container above doesn't have any bottom padding by the looks of it, so I think this looks good as is. And on mobile, yeah, it looks good here as well. Okay, there's my page done. I'll just return to full screen view and let's save that. And now let's move on to one of our service pages. This is an empty page, but as I have 4 of these to make, I will finish one and then copy it over to the others and then customize them from there. Alright, let's start with the top container. I'll add a 1-1 combo, and the first thing I can see is that there seems to be some space below the header. This will no doubt be the default content padding. We could adjust this on a page-by-page basis, but I don't think I will need it at all. So it's probably a lot easier to change the global setting and override it on any specific page rather than the other way round. So I'll go to the global options, and on the layout page, I will reduce the page content padding to 0 pixels top and bottom. Okay, so now let's edit this container. I'll call this one Banner. I'll head to the Background tab and the Images tab. I'll start with an image. I'll select my banner image, and I will make sure the full-size image is selected. I'll also adjust the background position to be center top. And while I'm here, I'm also going to add a background color over this image, as I will be adding text as well. So at the bottom here, I'll set the background blend mode to overlay, and then I'll go to the color tab and add color 8 as the color, and I'll just go into the global color options here and set the alpha channel to -50, reducing the opacity of that color. From here, I'll go to the design tab and add some padding. I'll start with 120 pixels top padding. I'm going to add a section separator here like the other sections, so I will have to add bottom spacing in a different way. Now I'll add my title. This will say General Painting, and on the Design tab I'll center it, give it a font color of color 1, and set 0 pixels top and bottom margin. I'll also remove the default bottom margin off this column. So now I'm going to add my section separator column, and again I'll add it from the library. That comes in and looks perfect. The column in the library already has 120 pixels top padding, so this is good as is. I might just save this whole container into the library, as I might have use for it later. I'll just save the container and call it Page Title Bar. We could have made this as a Page Title Bar layout section, of course, and added that to a conditional layout, but I want different images on each page, and it's not going to be used on all pages. So in this case, I think it's easier just to add it to the page content. Okay, for the next section, I saw a container in Avada Studio that will be a good starting point for what I want here. So I will add a container and head to the Studio tab and see if I can find it. It had a button in it, and that's usually classed as a call to action. So I will filter to that. And yeah, there it is, the one called Industry Container 1753. I'll just preview this. I'll make sure the style is on local colors and typography, and I don't need the image, so I'll set images to placeholder and that should do it. I'll just import this. Okay, let's add an image. I'll just edit the image element here and remove the image placeholder and choose my own image here. I think I will use the Painting Services one again. I'll add the full size one here. And here I think I will also change the image aspect ratio. I think I'll just choose 1:1 here to make the image square. Now I'll change my title. This one is going to say, Quality means doing it right when no one is looking. I don't really want the heading font here, so I will go to the Design tab and apply the body text set instead. Now I will override the font size to 44 pixels and adjust the line height back to 1.2. Yeah, that looks good. Once you get the hang of these global typography sets, they are very useful. Now for my button. I'll just edit the nested column and the button, and I'll set the URL to be the Get a Quote page and put Get a Quote Today as the button text. Okay, let's close that nested column. Finally, I'm just going to remove this background color. I'll just edit the container, and on the Background tab, I'll remove color 2 as the background color. Yeah, I think that's it for that container. Okay, let's move to the next section, which is going to be a pricing container. I could use the pricing element, but again, there's one in Avada Studio that uses a different method, and I think it's going to be quicker for me here. I'll add a new container and go to the Studio tab. I can just filter by pricing table, and it's this dark one here I want. The style is already set to local colors and typography, but I think I will invert the colors here. Yeah, let's import that. Yeah, that looks pretty close to what I want. I'll start by editing this container and calling this one pricing plans. Let's just change the prices somewhat. Let's say $950, $2,000, and $3,500. And I'll change the button as well. I will link the button to the Get a Quote page, but I think I will call it Book This Plan. I will just do that to the other two as well. I also want to change the background color of this container, so I'll edit that and give it a background color of color 4, and then take most of the color out of this by setting the alpha channel to -90 or so. I can now see 2 of the columns don't have a background color, so I'll also edit those and set them to color 1. Yeah, that looks good. These studio items can really save some time. Of course, for a real site, we'd edit the text and the checklists on these columns, but I think you get the idea. For the last section on this page, I want a specific painting projects gallery. I have a similar section on the home page, so I think I will just go and copy that. So I will head there and scroll down near the bottom and copy this container and come back and paste it in here. I'll start by renaming this. I'll just edit the container and call it General Painting Projects. And on the Background tab, I'll change the background color to color 7. For the title, I'll change that to General Painting Projects and change the font color to color 1. Okay, now for the images. I'll edit the gallery element and remove these images. And now I'll use bulk add to add the 3 images I want here. As I select them, I will actually give them a title and caption here in the media library. I'll just call this first one Room Painting with a caption of Painting. The second one will be Interior Painting with the same caption of Painting. And the last one will be Exterior Painting and the same caption again. Okay, I'll just select the 400 pixel size for the thumbs here and let's add them to the gallery. And as we can see, the images come in with the titles and captions added. Okay, that's our first individual service page. I'll just save that. For the other 3 service pages, I will just copy this page, and then I simply need to change out the images and a few titles, etc. I'll just do them and come back. Alright, we now have 4 individual service pages. We will have a good look at them when we review the site. Let's now turn to the last static page, the Reviews page. The wizard has added 3 containers of layout content to this page, and I think I will keep these and just customize them, and maybe add another call to action container at the bottom. I'll start with this top container. I might add a background color, or perhaps a gradient instead. Let's start with the container name though. I'll call this one Testimonial Hero. And now on the background tab, I'll go to gradient, and I will add color 4 as the start color, and go to the global color options here and reduce the opacity by 90%. And then we can just let that fade into white at the bottom. And on the design tab, I think I'll also reduce the padding here back down to 70 pixels or so. Now for an image. I will just remove this placeholder and then add my own image. I'll just use the full size version. Now this image has a mask applied to it, and I can see the image focus point is set towards the right. So I'm just going to click this Reset to Default button, which will center the focus point. It also has a custom aspect ratio, and I think I will set that back to 1:1. Yeah, I think that looks better. Okay, for the title, again, I'd prefer a different font here, and I can see a highlight has been applied to a couple of words here, and I like that. So I will paste my copy in. Now to add the highlight back, I'll select High Quality and click on Add Element from the inline formatting toolbar that comes up. Here I'll select Highlight and choose the marker style. I'll set the background color to be color 4 at 50% opacity and the font color to be color 8. Now to change the style of the font, I'll just edit the element, and on the Design tab I'll load the body font set and override the font size to 44 pixels and the line height to 1.2. Yeah, that matches the other one I did. Okay, let's go to the next section. Here I think I will just change out the image placeholder. In this case it's added as a column background, so I will edit the column and head to the background tab and the image tab. I'll just swap this background image out for my own. I'll also just change the background position to center top. And I might tweak the padding here a bit. So on the design tab I'll increase the top padding to 150 pixels and decrease the bottom padding to 100. Yeah, I think that looks good. Okay, the next section is the reviews section. Here I want something similar to the styling of the reviews on the home page, so I think I'll copy one of those to use as a basis for this page. So I will delete 3 of these 4 columns here, and then head to the home page and scroll down, and copy one of these review columns here. These are 1/3 columns, and that way I can put 3 across the page on the reviews page. So let's return there, and paste this in before the remaining column, and then I can just delete that as well. Okay, I'll just customize this a bit before cloning it. I want a green background for these reviews, so I'll just go and set that to color 2. Also, on a real site, I would be likely to have reviews of different length, and I'd like the name to always be aligned along the bottom. The column alignment is set to stretch on the parent container, but that just keeps the columns the same height. What I want is to always have the name and image aligned as I want as well. And there is a good way to use the separator element for that. So I will add one of those in after the text element. I'll just set it to no style, and on the design tab, I'll set the flex grow option to 1. If we look at the description, we can see that what this does is to control the amount of the available space inside the flex column the separator should take up. If the separator is the only element in the column using flex grow, which it is here, then any value above 0 will let it take up all available space. So now, if the reviews have different lengths, the separator element will just grow, and the name and image will always be aligned. Perfect. Now I'm happy with the look of this review column. I'll just clone it 5 times to make 2 rows. And now I'll just update the reviews, ratings, names, and images. Be back in a sec. Okay, that looks great. I had to add a couple more images for the last 2 reviews, and I changed the review length. And you can see that they still stay the same height, and that the ratings, name, and image all stay at the same alignment. Of course, you could also use the testimonials element here, if that suited the style of your site. But as you can see, it's not hard to make them manually. Actually, before we move on, I can see this container has 100 pixels bottom padding, and my duplicated columns also have bottom margin. There are a couple of ways to fix this, but here I think I will just remove the bottom margin on the bottom 3 columns. Let's just check the responsive view. On medium screen view it looks the same as on desktop, which works for me, so let's look at the small screen. Here they have defaulted to 1:1 columns. This is normal responsive behavior, and of course you can always override this with the small screen column size option. If I just edit one of these columns, we can see there is already a smaller margin applied for small screen, and this is also applied to the 3 I removed it off, so this works well here. The container padding is also smaller on small screens. Perfect. I'll just return to large screen view. Alright, let's make the last section here. I want to have a bit of a call to action at the bottom of the page here. I'll start with the container with a 3/5 column. I want the column to be centered, so I'll edit the container and set the column justification to center. And this container is only going to have 1 column, so I will set the column spacing to 0 pixels as well. I'll just call this container CTA. Okay, this container is going to have a background image, and I'm going to use the same one I used for the hero section on the home page. So let's add that. And I might change the background position of this to right bottom here, as that's where the interesting stuff is in this shot. And on the design tab, let's give this some top and bottom padding. Somewhere around 70 pixels should be good, as I'm also going to have content in the column as well. So now let's add that. I'll give the column a background color of color 7, and I'll also set some internal padding to this column as well. Again, I'll add 70 pixels all around this time. And I'll just remove that bottom margin. Okay, now for some column content. I'll add a title and call it High Quality Painting and Decorating. And I will center it, set it to a H3, and make the font color color 1. Now for some text. I'll just add a text block element and then add some lorem ipsum to it. Again, I'll align it to the center and set the font color to color 1. Finally, I'll just add a button. I'll link it to the Get a Quote page and call it Get a Quote Today, and I'll set the alignment to center as well. I might just come back to the text block element, and on the Design tab I'll just set some margins. I'll give it 10% right and left, and maybe 30 pixels at the bottom to push that button down a bit more. Yeah, that looks awesome. And I think we can call this page done as well. I'll just check for any responsive issues. It looks good on medium screens and also on small screens. But here I think I will tweak the container padding. So I will edit the container and go to the Design tab and change the right and left padding to 70 pixels. Okay, let's come back to the large screen view and save this page. Alright, so far we have built out the home page, the services page, the individual service pages, and the reviews page. We have the shop and the blog to come, as well as the contact page. In the next video in this series, we'll tackle the shop. I hope to see you there. Okay, this concludes part 4 of our video on building a website from scratch with Avada. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with all the latest videos. And if you have any questions or need assistance, please create a support ticket and our team will gladly assist you. As always, we want to thank you for choosing Avada.